Welcome to HardScript.
Help me reach 5,000 subscribers. Support the video with a like and leave your thoughts in the comments. She said I was addicted to touch like it was a diagnosis she'd practiced in the mirror. Calm voice. Neutral face. The kind she used after her Tuesday night Zoom sessions. She didn't look at me when she said it. She looked past me, at the wall, like I was already a solved problem. I remember thinking how strange it was that the sentence didn't hurt the way it should have. It landed clean. Clinical. Like a measurement. I'm Mark Reynolds. 41. Industrial automation engineer. I spend my days inside systems that don't tolerate emotion. Sensors either trigger or they don't. Motors either run or they fail. At the plant, nobody talks about needs. We talk about tolerances. At home, that used to be different. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just human. A hand on the shoulder when I passed behind her chair. A kiss on the neck while she scrolled. Small things. Apparently, those were symptoms now. Emma worked product at a wellness startup that sold calm to people who couldn't sit still. Her vocabulary had changed over the last year. Boundaries. Regulation. Attachment styles. Words that sounded soft but left bruises when used right. After work, she'd come home with bags from Whole Foods. Clean labels, clean colors, like food could absolve a day. She'd log into Zoom again after dinner. Headphones on, nodding at people I never saw. I started noticing she'd flinch when I touched her arm, just slightly, like static. That night, after the diagnosis, she explained it wasn't about blame. It never was with her anymore. It was about awareness. She said her coach had helped her see patterns. She said closeness could be compulsive, that intimacy was something to detox from. I listened. I always listened. Years of shift work trained me for that. Long pauses don't scare me. Later, when she fell asleep, I didn't reach for her. I lay there staring at the ceiling, counting breaths like I do on the Peloton at 5 a.m. When the house is quiet and my legs burn but my head clears. I thought about the word addicted. About how, in my world, when something is labeled a fault, you don't argue with the label. You isolate it. You remove variables. You shut the system down clean. The next morning, I drove to work in my Mazda CX-5 with an Audible book playing low. Something about decision-making under pressure. I didn't touch the volume. I didn't touch my phone. By the time I parked, I'd already made a choice she wouldn't recognize as one. If touch was the problem, I was ready to quit cold. I didn't announce anything. That was the first rule. Systems fail when you warn them. So I changed nothing on the surface and everything underneath. At work, I tightened routines. At home, I loosened my presence until it was barely there. The first adjustment was physical. I stopped reaching. No hand on her back when she passed. No kiss out of habit. No leaning into the couch space she used to fill without thinking. I sat straight, like a guest who knew he wouldn't be staying long. Emma noticed, but not right away. When she did, she interpreted it through the lens she'd been given. Progress. Regulation. She said my energy felt calmer. I nodded. Calm is easy when you disengage. Next came time. I woke earlier for the Peloton, 5 a.m. Same cadence every day, same instructor voice drilling rhythm into my head. Sweat replaced conversation. After showers, I drove to the plant before she woke. Audible playing low, nonfiction, no narrators that sounded like they wanted something from me. At night, when she logged into Zoom, I didn't hover in the kitchen anymore. I took my laptop into the spare room and rebuilt my weeks in Notion. Lists. Blocks. No overlap. She started filling the silence with language. She talked about her coach more. Not by name at first. Just the ideas. He believed touch was transactional. He believed desire needed reparenting. He believed distance created clarity. She repeated those lines like calibration steps, checking my reaction. I gave her none. Neutral inputs produce neutral outputs. 2 weeks in, she told me she was proud. Said most men resist growth. Said I was different. That was the first time I felt the shift. Not relief. Not sadness. Control. She thought the system was responding to her commands. She didn't realize I'd isolated her from it entirely. I rotated passwords next. Banking. Streaming. Shared cloud folders we hadn't opened in months. I didn't lock her out abruptly. I just stopped renewing access. Calendars desynced. Notifications stopped landing. When she asked if something was wrong with her phone, I said I hadn't noticed anything. Truthful enough. Whole Foods bags kept showing up on the counter. Cleaner labels. Fewer carbs. She ate alone more often, scrolling between bites, typing messages I couldn't see. I ate earlier, or later. Sometimes not at all. Hunger sharpens focus. One night, she reached for my hand on the couch without thinking. Muscle memory. I didn't pull away. I didn't lean in. I just let my hand stay still, like an object that had been removed from use. She withdrew first. That was the moment I knew the protocol was working. Silence changes a room faster than arguments ever do. By week 3, the house had learned my absence even when I was standing in it. Emma moved differently around me, slower, like she was navigating furniture that might shift if touched. She kept narrating her inner work, filling space I no longer occupied. She said the distance was healthy. She said she finally felt spacious. I believed her. Space does that when someone else leaves it. I started staying later at the plant, not because the work demanded it, but because systems hum better when they're not observed. I liked the control room after midnight. Panels glowing, data flowing, everything accountable. When I drove home in the Mazda, Audible played chapters about habit loops and stimulus control. I wasn't listening for advice. I was confirming a hypothesis. At home, she'd already be logged into Zoom, door closed, voice lowered. I never asked who was on the other side. I didn't need to. Influence has a sound to it, a cadence. The way she repeated phrases afterward told me more than names ever would. She said her coach challenged her to redefine intimacy. She said touch could be earned back through alignment. Earned was the word that stuck. In engineering, when something must be earned, it's because it's been removed from baseline. I adjusted further. Shared playlists disappeared. Photos stopped syncing. I archived conversations instead of deleting them. No drama. No erasure. Just distance. In Notion, my life looked clean. Blocks of time that didn't intersect. Goals that didn't require consensus. When she asked if we should plan a weekend away, I said my schedule was tight. That was true. I'd filled it with myself. She began testing boundaries she thought she'd set. Standing closer. Lingering in doorways. Wearing the soft sweater she used to save for Sundays. I didn't comment. I didn't reach. She mistook my restraint for healing. She said her coach would be proud. That was the first time she used him as a measuring device. One night, she came into the spare room and sat on the edge of the bed while I worked. She talked about rewiring attachment, about power dynamics, about how some men panic when control shifts. I kept typing. She eventually left. The door clicked softly behind her. Later, I heard her pacing. A notification sound. A laugh she hadn't used with me in months. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Systems announce changes quietly before they fail. I shut down my laptop and lay back, hands folded on my chest, like a patient who'd agreed to treatment and stopped feeling pain altogether. Whatever she thought she was building, it no longer included me. That was the night I realized I wasn't recovering. I was exiting. The shift became visible when she stopped explaining herself. That's usually when someone thinks they've secured authority. Emma no longer narrated her growth to me. She assumed my silence meant compliance. She assumed correctly, just not in the way she thought. Her Zoom calls moved later. Headphones stayed on even after the screen went dark. She started showering twice a day. Once in the morning, once after what she called integration sessions. The language stayed clean. The signals didn't. I stopped tracking patterns emotionally and started logging them the way I do alarms at the plant. Timestamps. Frequency. Drift. I adjusted my own parameters again. My phone went to grayscale. Notifications off except for work. I rerouted my paychecks into an account she'd never needed access to. Not as punishment, as containment. Systems that leak get isolated. That's not anger. That's maintenance. She noticed the money before she noticed me. Asked if payroll had changed. I said it hadn't, which was true. The system worked exactly as designed. She accepted the answer and returned to her screen. Influence prefers distraction. The coach acquired shape through absence. I never saw him. I never needed to. Emma began dressing for someone who wasn't in the room. Not provocative. Intentional. Clean lines. Neutral colors. The kind of aesthetic that signals authority without asking permission. She said he helped her feel embodied. She said he helped her detach from unhealthy dynamics. I didn't challenge the diagnosis. I let it harden. At night, I listened to Audible in the Mazda, parked 2 blocks from the house after my shift, letting chapters finish before going inside. Decision trees. Exit costs. The calm voice in my ear matched the calm in my chest. There was no spike anymore. No jealousy. Just clarity. Inside, the house had reorganized itself around two separate orbits. She ate her Whole Foods meals at the counter, phone angled away. I ate standing up or not at all. She talked about energy. I tracked consumption. She talked about expansion. I reduced footprint. One evening, she stood in the doorway and watched me lace my shoes. She said something about missing our old rhythm. Not asking for it back. Just noting it. I nodded once and left. The Mazda started clean. No hesitation. That night, she didn't sleep. I could hear it in the pacing, the refrigerator opening, the muted vibration of messages arriving too fast to be work. I lay still, hands flat, breathing slow. When systems destabilize, the temptation is to intervene. I didn't. By morning, she was softer, quieter. She said she felt a shift coming. She said the process was working. She was right, just not on her side of the equation. The first crack showed up as confidence. That's how it usually comes. Emma started moving through the house like someone who'd been promoted without a title. Shoulders back, chin level. She spoke less to me and more around me, as if the room itself were the audience. When she mentioned her coach now, it was with certainty, not explanation. She said he helped her see power structures clearly. She said some relationships survive only because one person refuses to evolve. I kept evolving in the opposite direction. I reduced inputs further. My phone stayed silent. My calendar was mine alone. I removed myself from the shared streaming account one night while she slept, not out of spite, but because I was done watching stories that weren't mine. In Notion, I marked a quiet milestone. 0 shared dependencies. That's when systems stop negotiating. She didn't notice immediately. Authority creates blind spots. When she did, she framed it as success. She said I seemed independent. She said the space was paying off. She touched my arm once while passing, quick and casual, like a test pulse. I didn't respond. I didn't recoil. I simply remained inert. Her hand dropped away on its own. A few days later, she came home later than usual. No explanation. No apology. The Whole Foods bags were lighter, like she'd eaten elsewhere. She showered and moved through the bedroom with deliberate noise, waiting for me to look. I didn't. Audible played low in my earbuds, a chapter about sunk cost fallacy. I listened until the end. That night, I slept deeply. No dreams. No scans for movement beside me. When I woke before dawn for the Peloton, she was already awake, sitting upright in bed, phone in her hands. She didn't ask where I was going. She watched me leave. By the end of the week, the house felt provisional, like a rental between owners. She started leaving earlier, returning later. Her Zoom calls shifted from the office to cafes. I knew because the background noise changed. Cups, chairs, distance disguised as productivity. The physical line had been crossed somewhere else. I didn't need proof. I needed confirmation of trajectory. Systems don't fail at the moment of breach. They fail when the safeguards are gone. I'd removed mine deliberately. One evening, she asked if I was happy. Not pleading. Curious. Like a clinician checking vitals. I said I felt stable. That answer unsettled her more than anger ever could have. She studied my face, searching for the version of me she'd been trained to correct. She didn't find him. That was when she realized she no longer had leverage. And that was when she started reaching backward instead of forward. When control slips, people don't tighten their grip right away. They soften first. Emma's voice changed before her behavior did. It lost the instructional tone. She started asking questions that weren't really questions. How I was sleeping. Whether work felt heavy. If I missed us. I answered honestly and briefly. I slept fine. Work was stable. I didn't elaborate on the rest. She tried proximity next. Sitting closer at the counter. Brushing past me in the hallway. Small recalibrations. She framed them as curiosity, not need. I treated them like background noise. When a system is decommissioned, stray signals don't get processed. One night, she cooked. That alone told me something had shifted. Real food, not packaged clean label absolution. She set a plate in front of me like an offering and waited. I ate. I thanked her. I stood up and rinsed my dish. The moment passed without ceremony. She watched it fail. The coach's presence grew louder after that. Not in volume, but in authority. She quoted him directly now. About masculine withdrawal. About resistance masquerading as calm. About how some men retreat when they're losing dominance. I didn't correct the theory. I let it stand on its own weight. She came home late again. This time she said she'd stayed after a session to talk. Integration takes time, she said. Her eyes didn't seek mine when she spoke. They flicked sideways, checking alignment with a narrative she'd rehearsed. I nodded once. Acceptance can look like indifference when you're done negotiating. That weekend, I moved quietly. Packed a bag she wouldn't notice missing. Work clothes. Documents. Hard drives. I transferred the last shared utility account into my name and scheduled a cutoff date weeks out. No shock. No scramble. In Notion, I checked off the final dependency. Exit readiness complete. She sensed it then. Not the logistics. The emotional withdrawal that no vocabulary can disguise. She stood in the doorway one morning and asked if I was pulling away. Her tone was careful, like someone handling fragile equipment. I told her I was following her guidance. Reducing attachment. Removing compulsive behaviors. Staying regulated. The words landed wrong. She recognized them. She'd taught them to me. Seeing them mirrored back without warmth unsettled her. She said that wasn't what she meant. Growth wasn't supposed to feel like this. I said growth rarely feels comfortable when it's real. That was the first time she looked afraid. Not of losing me. Of losing influence. She reached for my hand then, fully this time. Not testing. Not symbolic. I didn't pull away. I didn't squeeze back. I let my hand remain exactly where it was, unavailable. Her fingers loosened. The space between us filled with something she couldn't name. I already had. It was freedom, and it didn't require permission. The confirmation didn't arrive as a confession. It never does when power is involved. It arrived as scheduling drift. Emma's evenings stopped being negotiable. Her calendar, once something she shared proudly, became opaque. She talked about retreats now. About embodiment weekends. About holding space. The phrases floated through the house without landing anywhere. I let them pass. One night, she didn't come home. Not late. Not delayed. Just absent. A message arrived close to midnight, saying she was staying with a friend from her cohort. The wording was careful, neutral, designed to prevent follow-up questions. I didn't respond. I finished a chapter on Audible, turned off the light, and slept. In the morning, the house felt lighter. Less air pressure. Like a door had been cracked somewhere. She returned mid-morning, sunglasses on, movements precise. She said the night had been clarifying. She said she'd crossed a threshold in her work. She didn't say with whom. She didn't have to. Systems announced state changes without explanation. I didn't ask. I poured coffee, packed my gym bag, left for the Peloton ride that had become my anchor. Rhythm over narrative. Metrics over meaning. My heart rate recovered fast. Faster than it used to. Adaptation has its rewards. When I came back, she was sitting at the table, phone face down. Waiting. She said we needed to talk about where this was going. Her tone wasn't confrontational. It was managerial. Like she was aligning stakeholders before a pivot. She said the work had shown her things. She said she needed authenticity. She said she didn't want to live in a dynamic that suppressed her truth. I let her finish. Silence does that. It encourages over-explanation. She said touch had confused her. That intimacy blurred boundaries. That her coach had helped her feel safe in her body again. Safe was the word she emphasized, as if safety required exclusion. When she stopped, I said I agreed. With the diagnosis. With the remedy. With the direction. I said I'd already adjusted my behavior to remove dependency. I said I felt clearer than I had in years. I thanked her for naming the issue. She blinked. The script faltered. She hadn't expected compliance this complete. She said that wasn't what she meant. That growth was mutual. That partnership required engagement. I said partnership requires consent. I said I'd withdrawn mine quietly, the way I was taught. Her face changed then. Not anger. Calculation. She asked if I was seeing someone else. The question carried more fear than accusation. I said no. That would have been unnecessary. I said I'd chosen absence instead. That was when she understood the cost of turning closeness into a pathology. You can't rehabilitate someone who's already discharged himself. By the time she reached for me again, it wasn't therapeutic. It was panic. And panic doesn't get negotiated with. She tried to restore balance by accelerating. That's a common mistake. When someone feels power slipping, they confuse speed with control. Emma shifted from caution to urgency in a single day. She suggested a weekend reset. She proposed rules, then softened them. She said maybe the timing had been wrong. Maybe the work had gone too far, too fast. She framed it as flexibility, but it was really recoil. I didn't counter. I didn't reassure. I maintained the same tone I used with failing equipment. Calm, precise, uninterested in blame. I said I was aligned with her original assessment. That dependency creates distortion. That removing stimuli brings clarity. I said I'd never felt more regulated. I could see her trying to reconcile that with the version of me she still wanted access to. That night, she crossed the last line quietly. No announcement. No drama. She came into my room after midnight and lay beside me like it was still allowed. Her body searched for memory. Familiar pressure. Old calibration. I didn't move. I didn't stiffen. I simply remained unresponsive. Not rejecting. Unavailable. She rolled away eventually, breathing uneven. In the morning, she cried. Not loudly. The contained kind. The kind meant to trigger repair. I got dressed and made coffee. I asked if she needed anything before I left. The question landed harder than silence. She shook her head. I left. At work, I filed a request for remote rotation. Temporary. Approved without friction. Industrial systems reward predictability. I packed my remaining things that evening while she was on a Zoom call, voice low, posture forward. I didn't interrupt. I didn't say goodbye. I loaded the Mazda with what I needed and drove off before the call ended. I stayed in a short-term rental across town. Clean. Neutral. No shared history embedded in the walls. Audible played in the background while I unpacked. A chapter about exits done well. I slept deeply. The message arrived the next day. Long, emotional. Carefully worded. She said she didn't recognize me anymore. She said the work wasn't meant to erase connection. She said she felt punished. I read it once. I archived it. No response. 2 days later, another message. Shorter. Sharper. She accused me of weaponizing her language. Of hiding behind calm. Of abandoning process. I archived that one too. The third message came late at night. No theory. No framing. Just fear. She asked where I'd gone. She asked if there was someone else. She asked if I was coming back. I didn't answer. Because I already had. The protocol was complete. She had named touch an addiction. I had completed rehab. And discharge, when done properly, is silent. Distance has a way of reorganizing truth. Once I was gone, Emma's narrative started collapsing under its own weight. Not publicly. Privately. That's where power struggles end when there's no audience left. She showed up at the rental unannounced on the 4th day. Not dramatic. Controlled. She stood in the hallway like someone waiting for permission that used to be automatic. I didn't invite her in. I didn't block the doorway either. I let the moment decide for itself. She spoke carefully. Said she'd misread the process. Said the coach had encouraged exploration, not replacement. Said lines had blurred. Said it wasn't supposed to cost us this. I listened without interruption. Silence still did most of the work for me. When she finished, she waited for correction. For reassurance. For negotiation. I told her I understood. I told her the framework had been clear. Touch was dependency. Closeness was distortion. Authority required distance. I told her I'd simply applied the model without sentiment. She said that wasn't fair. That systems can't be applied to people. I told her people introduce variability, systems are designed to reduce. That answer ended the conversation. She left without another word. After that, the messages stopped trying to persuade and started trying to document. She sent reflections. Apologies shaped like insight. Admissions wrapped in growth language. She wanted a record that showed intention, not outcome. I archive them all. Records don't require response. At work, the remote rotation extended. I moved again, farther out. Quieter. My mornings stayed disciplined. Peloton at dawn. Audible in the car. Meals chosen for function, not comfort. The calm didn't fade. It consolidated. Weeks passed. Mutual friends stopped asking questions when they realized I wouldn't supply a narrative. Emma adjusted publicly. New language. New circles. Photos that suggested peace without ever proving it. I didn't engage. Systems don't monitor environments they've exited. One afternoon, she sent a final message. No framing. No theory. She said she missed my hand on her back when she cooked. She said she hadn't understood what she was calling addiction. She said she'd confused being needed with being trapped. I read it once. I didn't archive it. I deleted it. Not out of anger. Out of completion. Some things only exist inside a system. Once you leave it, they stop functioning. The Mazda idled quietly in the parking lot as I shut the phone off. No vibration. No pull. Just a clean line forward. I didn't feel victorious. I felt finished. And that was the point. People expect an ending to announce itself. Closure. Resolution. A final exchange that explains everything. That expectation is part of the old system. I didn't need it. Months passed without contact. Not because we agreed to distance, but because distance no longer required agreement. Emma rebuilt her world publicly. Retreat photos. Quotes about embodiment. Smiling faces arranged around her like proof. The coach appeared once, indirectly, tagged by someone else, standing just behind her shoulder. Symbolic authority intact. I felt nothing when I saw it. Symbols only work on those still inside the story. My life narrowed and sharpened. The plant promoted me quietly. Fewer meetings. More control. I bought a different place, smaller, closer to work. No shared furniture. No echoes. The Mazda stayed clean, empty except for what I chose to carry. Audible kept me company on long drives. Books about systems design, failure analysis, human error. Familiar terrain. One morning, while grocery shopping, I passed her in a Whole Foods aisle. No warning. No build-up. She froze first. I didn't. She looked thinner. Not fragile. Focused. Like someone still mid-process. She said my name. Just once. I turned. We stood there with clean food between us, bright lights overhead, nothing dramatic to hide behind. She said she hadn't expected me to look calm. I said I felt calibrated. She said she'd learned a lot. I said learning changes outputs, not inputs. She smiled weakly. She said she missed how safe it felt to lean into me. I said safety that depends on control isn't safety. It's management. There was nothing left to extract from the moment. We wished each other well. Not as a performance. As an acknowledgement. Then I walked away. No backward glance. No spike in pulse. Later, driving home, I thought about the phrase that started everything. Addicted to touch. How easily life gets renamed when someone wants leverage. How quickly living gets medicalized when it threatens authority. In my world, when a system mislabels a healthy signal as a fault, you don't argue semantics. You remove yourself from the environment. That's what rehab had been. Not recovery. Separation. She wanted distance so she could define the rules. I gave her distance so I could leave the game. Some people fight diagnoses. Some accept them literally. When someone tells you your humanity is a defect, the strongest response isn't protest. It's compliance taken to its logical end. I wasn't cured. I was discharged. And the quiet after that wasn't loneliness. It was signal clarity. The kind you only hear once the noise stops. Support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. I promise even more interesting stories.